David, I see all the cacophony that's out there in the news, the disinflation in Europe, economic slowdown here, there, and everywhere. And to me, it all comes back to the NX on the back end of every nation's equation. Is the tension that's out there right now, is it just simply about a broken multilateral trade system?
Well, the trade system is being completely reset, and it's no longer going to be multilateral for the U.S., and which is the largest partner. So that, to me, is a substantive a substantive distinction. But what we have to do is when we look beyond the news, I think we have the wrong expectations for what we should be looking for on March 1st. What we should be looking for is, are there continuing dialogues between China and the U.S.? Because that, to me, is the best possible outcome, which would be we agree on a few things. We agree to continue.
For both parties.
Potentially, and that's right. I mean, China clearly wants a deal. The second thing is that and I just came back from a lengthy trip to Asia, is that what's really going on within China is two things. One is the trade with the U.S., but many of the companies that produce goods in China have other plants in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Thailand, and in Indonesia. And the second effect on China is that those manufacturers are going to move their operations, and they plan to move their operations outside of China. So there's two sort of forces that are aligning against China at the moment.
And Marty, within your travels to Asia, I mean, we've seen this time and time again at Bloomberg News Asia. The elasticity of the system is not understood within America, is it?
No, I think Americans, commonly think of China as this monolithic, walled, insular economy, when in fact they have
spent... That was in the Ava Gardner movie.
Yeah, when in fact they have expanded vastly outside their borders to create a manufacturing powerhouse, which is under threat by these tariffs.
Marty, to put it simplistically, is it just, does it boil down to whether it's good politically for the president to have a deal with China or not? Or do we think that he actually wants to change the way trade is? I mean, I always heard that actually, as long as it's a smoke and mirror, even if it's a smoke and mirror, then the markets would be happy with that. Would the president be happy with that?
It is a fascinating thing to watch whether or not Donald Trump is willing to upset the world order by insisting on a systematic change in China, which China has consistently said they will not do. So against a backdrop where his favorability ratings in the U.S. are at his presidency's low, he desperately wants to get a deal. But the question is, will he take an off-ramp, take something less than draconian, and declare victory?
David, what's priced in the market right now? Is it, a no deal between the U.S. and China, or are they already pricing in some sort of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think the market, has tended to be a bit optimistic on the outcomes that are taking place, that are likely to take place. So I feel like they're anticipating some type of trend, some type of deal. On the other hand, we've actually measured, what we think the impact of China on the negative side has been, and it's between 5 and 10%. Potentially on world indices if you were to look back over the last 18 months. So, any news, a continuation of negotiations, right, I think would be viewed very positively.
Can your team, economics, all of Private Bank, can you state that this debate on China trade has also dampened global GDP?
There's no question but that it has, and I'll just give you two very simple examples. Just take a look at the trade between China and Germany, which I think has got an obvious economic impact, and between China and Japan, where you can actually see, the actual trade volumes down of critical elements, robotics and other
And unlike
high-tech.
The tariffs, this is in the data right now.
That's exactly right, and so you can see what the impact actually is. So our view is it's a very substantive issue, and what Trump is dealing with are issues that have been out there for 20 years, just unaddressed, which happens to do with intellectual property rights, which has to do with opening of the markets. And we'll see this, I think, Tom, in the next quarter. But when we look back on phone sales, the question is, was Tim Cook being honest? Is it really the China slowdown that caused Apple phones to be less sold? And the answer, I think, will be no. You're going to see that Huawei's phones picked up the slack, and that there was no decline in phone sales.